Ukraine has a big problem. Russia has a brand new missile, and while we don't have a photo of it, this is a drawing of it called Zircon. It's important that you learn about these missiles because in the coming months or even weeks, you're going to hear a lot about them in the news. Mostly because it was just recently revealed that Russia had moved a lot of these and their launchers to occupied Crimea. In a moment, you'll understand how dangerous that is and that something needs to be done in order to get some kind of protection from these missiles. Any information on this missile first came out in 2017. That's when Russia announced that they developed some kind of weapon that can hit Mach 8. It wouldn't be until a year later in December of 2018 where Russia did finally put this to the test, and it did hit Mach 8 at its peak. That's something to keep in mind. The reason why I say that is because the newer version can hit Mach 9, but it's not like the entire time the rocket's in the sky that it's hitting those speeds. Nonetheless though, even sitting at Mach 6, for example, is extremely fast. By February 2019, it was announced that this could hit Mach 9 and that they were developing a different version of this because the original one was made for the Navy to take down other Navy ships. This new one was to hit land targets. For the next several years, Russia was testing these features, firing them for many different things, frigates, submarines, aiming them at targets about 450 kilometers away, up to 1,000. And for the Russian military, at least from their announcements, it worked. And so by 2022, these were officially in service. But it wouldn't be until January 2023 when these were fully installed on certain kinds of ships. So we'll say that the activation day was January of some date in 2023. So what makes this missile very different than, say, the Kinzhal, which can go up to Mach 10? This one has, right on the back here, a scramjet, which gives this missile a lot of extra hypersonic push, which then makes it harder to hit down. And I know what you're saying, but Ukraine, they're known to take these things out of the skies. And that's true. The issue comes along is when Russia does their massive bombardments every night with 100 or so odd air targets. The real issue we see is, say, when Russia does have all those missiles coming at once, because this one's going so quickly, it could potentially pierce through all those Patriot systems and hit targets. But here is the biggest by far problem we have with these missiles. Usually cruise missiles are fired, say, from airplanes. So you're able to potentially, in a way, predict where they're going to go. Are they taking off from the Caspian Sea? Are they taking off over Russia? And you can kind of see where they're pointed. And from there you can kind of track and put half of the country in air raid. But when it comes to these, especially on March 25th, Russia has now learned to fire them from the ground. That is very hard to track. And we saw examples of this, because back on March 25th, a few days ago, there was maybe 35 seconds between air alarm going off and then the explosion. That's because these things took off, kind of flew down pretty low, and then came up to go into Kyiv, which meant that the air alert system, they weren't able to see that. Versus aircraft who take off at, say they shoot them at 2,000 feet, you could at least know this is where it's coming from. But when rockets are flying so low, you can't trace them, you can't track them. So now back to my original statement. Russia is now putting these in occupied Crimea. So let's do just a little bit. Crimea, at least the heart of Crimea, to Kyiv is roughly about 360 miles just straight across, when obviously not counting roads like if you would on Google Maps. Mach 8 is roughly about 5,400 miles. I said Mach 8 because this can go up to Mach 9, but at its peak it's doing 8, so really it could be a little bit slower, but for this math we're just going to say it's Mach 8. So that is 360 over 5,400, which is 115, which pretty much gets you times 60 is 4 minutes. That would mean that Ukraine would have anywhere between, at the slower side, 6 minutes, to the faster side, 3:30, to react to this missile. And once again, it's not the issue of being able to take this down. They can take it down, especially if it's on its own. It's the issue of Ukraine having to deal with hundreds of air targets, 150 air targets, for example. And if this comes through while that's going on, there's a strong possibility this is going to break through. But I do want to leave you with one thing. These things are expensive. It doesn't look like this is something that Russia is going to be able to use every single time they do a major attack. And while we don't have an official number of how much this cost, it's estimated to be anywhere between $10 to $20 million each. That is a lot of money that Russia does not have. But we do know they have some of them. That's why they put the launchers in occupied Crimea. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section below, and I apologize if this was a long video. There's just a lot of information going on out there about this missile, and you're going to need to know about it for the future.